right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Wrestling Prep Podcast. We're here with head coach Carolyn Wester. Carolyn, I know as we record this, we're just a couple months out from the first week of camp this summer, but you've got a lot of other stuff going on as well. Tell us a bit about what you're up to.
Well, sure, and for sure. I just want to thank you for getting up so early, Bryce, because I know you're in Arizona and it's not the same time as it is in Northern Virginia on this Saturday morning. Yeah, I feel like time compresses as we get close to summer, and we're really in the midst of that. This coming week, I'll be in Las Vegas. Of course, the U.S.
Okay.
Open will be going on, and we'll be coaching there. But primarily, I'm going to work with a professional sports team, some of their staff. And I'm really excited that we were contacted a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, to come, do that. And then when we get back, we're going to be recording a story. We got contacted by one of the major news broadcasters, and they want to do an
Okay.
in-person
That's awesome.
story. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't really know too much, but we've been called and getting organized for that. So I'm super excited about that.
All
And
right.
then in the month of May, I wrote everything down. I'm going to be in doing some work in New Jersey, coaching in New Jersey. And then I'll be off to do the camp in Louisville, Kentucky at
Right.
Moore High School for Coach Mike Thomas. And I'm really
Okay.
excited about that. We've been to Louisville 2 or 3 times in the last year, 2 years, I believe. And we've had athletes from Kentucky coming to camps. So I'm excited to go down and work with the athletes in Central Kentucky, especially since that's where I'm from.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very exciting. And then when we move into June, I think my first stop is in Montana. This will be my fourth summer in Montana, but we're actually in a different location this time, and I'm really excited about being there. And then come back from that, and then I'm going to Rapid City, South Dakota. I've never been to South Dakota,
Okay.
so I'm really looking forward. I'm going to go do a camp there for a club there in South Dakota. And then I come back and I will be going to New Jersey outside of the Philadelphia area. And I'm doing a camp in New Jersey, which should be really great. And then we come back, and that'll be right before I'll come back from New Jersey. It'll be go ahead and right into week one, which we're
Right.
excited about. We have a bunch of athletes arriving early to train from Oregon and California and Florida and a few other places. So they'll be in town. So then we'll have week one. And then when week one is over, then my next stop will be some athletes will stay for a week, a little less than a week and train. And then I'll be going back to Festus, Missouri, right outside of St. Louis. This
Hmm.
will be the second camp I've been asked to do there in less than, I guess, 8 months, 6 months. Is that right, Bryce? You
Right.
remember?
That sounds about right. Yeah, that's the one thing I've noticed about your schedule that's awesome is that you've been invited back to a whole bunch of places. It's probably fun as a coach as well to see the progression from one visit to the next when you see a lot of the same kids several months apart. But it's been cool to see that these teams keep asking you to come back to do repeat visits to build on what you were able to accomplish in the first visit, which is awesome.
It really is awesome. And I think people think sometimes I'll get messages, are you going to do a camp in the state? And in actuality, the only camps we set up are the camps in Virginia. The
Right.
rest are where people have reached out to me and then they invite me to come be the clinician. And they do all the logistics and all of those things. Only Virginia is the ones that, as
Mhm.
you know,
Right. Yeah.
is that you and Sophia and I know are the one and Coach Hill are the ones that we set up, and that's a bit different deal. So a lot of times I think people don't realize that because people will say to me, "Is that what you do? You just go around and set up camps and places and do that?" I'm like, "No, no, not at all." I
Yeah.
said, it's people ask me to come. I'm
Yeah.
not. I don't call up people and say, hey, would you like me to come to a clinic for you? Sometimes
Yeah,
I'll
so
follow
if,
up with
if you're
people. I've
uh
been there
if you're out
before.
there wanting to see Carolyn in your state, then check out the website, reach out, and that's
Yeah,
the way to get her there. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Well, it's also interesting too. A lot of people will say, well, I'm just hoping if you're near us, you could slide down. And I'm like, oh, I can't really do that if the organization that's inviting me out is paying for my transportation
Right,
and my
right.
lodging. I have to make it, equitable for those people who are actually funding me to come out to work with their athletes. But anyway,
Yeah,
so when I
yeah.
get back from Missouri, then we flip right into week 2, and that's going to be an exciting week. The 19th and 20th, we're having a coaches clinic with a mental
Hmm.
health aspect to it. We've got
Right.
two, one extremely world-renowned mental health development coaches will be here. And also we have an emerging expert in the field too, who we've actually had on our podcast before.
Right. Yeah.
So they'll
Yeah.
be here for that. Then we go into week 2, which is usually the first week all the D1 guys and women start showing up because they finished all their obligations at the camp. So we'll have that week 2 camp. And then we have 2 weeks of in residence. What I mean by in residence is not in residence in my home, but people that are coming and staying in the area to train twice a day, every day,
Okay.
all the way up through the week 3 camp, which is in, mid-August. I think
Right.
the second full week of August,
Okay.
or second full week of August. So
Hmm.
then, and then, it'll be, I usually end up doing one or two other things in September, but I don't have anything else on the books. But that seems like a lot for me. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm
It's
I'm excited. I'm
every
excited.
weekend,
I
every
mean,
other weekend, something like that. Yeah, for between now
yeah,
and August.
and we have three sets of organizations who have dates that we're waiting to hear back from. One's a top
Okay.
4 private school in the country,
All
and
right.
one is for a venue and some people in a club in California. And I can't remember where the third one is off the top of my head, but there's
All right.
contracts out to them and dates, and we're just waiting to hear back if they're
Yeah,
interested.
that sounds good.
Yeah, pretty
All
excited.
right.
So one thing
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
really want to talk about, especially now that the high school season is over and we're going into postseason, is what I've really been thinking about and watching and working through with some of these athletes is sort of this concept of avoidance versus acceptance.
Okay.
And I think what I mean by that, Bryce, is how when people don't get the results they want, they're not viewing what they've avoided, and they're not willing to accept where they are by reviewing what they avoided. And it's
Okay.
a kind of and usually there's a lot of finger pointing and blaming. But I once had, I think what is in the, what is it? In the book, Adult Children of Dysfunctional Families, there's a part where the author describes that anytime you're trying to achieve something or be in a family, it's like a wind chime. And when something isn't what everybody wants or expects, the wind chime, the wind blows hard and the chimes fly around. But as soon as time passes and it settles, all the chimes go back to the same place and nothing's changed.
Okay.
So I think a lot of times we're seeing that athletes and families and coaches are avoiding, and then they just accept what's happened instead of having a clear view and trying to change what they can change to improve.
Okay. Well, when you say avoiding, are you thinking like accepting the athlete's abilities or avoiding certain types of activities in practice or training? What sorts of things do you
Yeah,
mean
I
when you?
definitely think there is a component of avoiding where the athlete actually is in their development. But I think that comes from, I want to go back what you're describing, what they've avoided doing in the process. Most
Okay.
people coaches don't have with the athlete, parents don't have with their athlete doesn't have with the parent, and the parent doesn't have with the coach is a realistic goal or a goal of what they want. What do you want from your athlete wrestling in high school? Do you want them to feel comfortable in the sport where they can excel despite genetic differences
Right.
in other sports like baseball and basketball? Or are you hoping they get into college, or you wanting them to do something for 6 or 8 years and just know that the hard work they put in is something they're going to use the rest of their life?
Yeah, yeah.
Or, or is the goal, I want my kid to be a national champ, or I want my kid to do this. And then you have to find out and check, is that what the athlete wants?
Right.
And
Do you
also,
think those goals typically come from, as a parent myself, I think it's easy to want to like cement your own legacy by living vicariously through your kids, and so you kind of think, well, no kid of mine is going to settle for anything less than than being a national champ, and so is that, do you see that the goals are typically coming from parents, and then they kind of push them onto the kids, but it sounds like you're saying there's never a time where the kid is sat down and had there's a conversation had as to is this what you really want, and sometimes I think kids don't necessarily know what they want, but when
yeah.
as they age, it's important to
Well,
see
you
what
need to
they're
address
thinking
that.
too,
So
right?
if the goal is, I want my kid to be a national D1 champ. I want my kid to be a national D1 champ. So instead of in starting that verbiage in your athlete early, is going to a coach who would know and go through all the all the characteristics that need to be developed in
Okay, right,
youth to end up at that spot. And even no matter how talented they are, if they don't have a work ethic, if they're not open to change, if they can't learn to confront, and then the parent needs to work with themselves to see if they have the characteristics to develop the skill sets in youth. And that's a very hard thing for people want to address. They don't want to address that. And it's not because, I mean, I don't know why they don't, but I don't think it's because they're horrible people. I think
right,
it's
right,
because they're fear or whatever's going on. And then you need to understand that you're not going to end up, very unlikely, you're going to end up with one coach. And so when you're interviewing coaches or starting to work with coaches, and you may find if your goal really is for your kid to be a D1 national champ, you and your family may have to move to find a coach who understands they're not going to be your only coach and that there's
right.
always going to have to be collaboration with another coach and other people. It's never just one person, rarely,
Yeah, yeah,
rarely. And that's something that's a hard combination to get to. So if you do have the parent sets this goal and the coach says, I think your kid's really talented, you have to learn what are all the things your athlete needs to be doing. And they definitely do not need to be Triple Crown winners in fifth grade, or they don't need to have a huge amount of middle school accolades. But if
right,
your kid has a history of, they're not placing first, but they're placing on an even number, third, fifth, seventh, instead of, fourth, sixth, eighth, and they've learned to be the best comeback kid
right,
of all time in that character, and there's no value placed on whether they win or lose. They want to win. It hurts when they lose. You set up a methodology for them to express that emotion, let
mhm,
them feel the emotion, get through it, and move on. And that's what people avoid. And this is really the time of year to try to figure that out. But
right,
most people they leap into what I would call manic camp going, and they don't really have a plan, right? And if your athlete has done certain things a certain way every summer and there's no more results the next time, but you don't want to take the time or figure it out, you want to be able to it makes you feel something to post online that your kids at this camp, that camp, and this camp.
or wrestling in this tournament or this tournament or this tournament, yeah.
Yes, and if we it would be interesting if you asked AI to list the most important wrestling tournaments for somebody under the age of 13, because you can go on Facebook any day and every single post where someone's discussing a tournament their kids going to, this is prestigious, this is
Right.
national, this is
How many
this,
national championships can one kid earn in a year, right?
right, right, and how national can it be?
Right,
And just by the nature of it, it'd be impossible to get all the best kids together in one tournament. And
right,
you
right.
couldn't even get all the best wrestlers at the D1 national championship because frankly, there's other athletes who wrestle D2, D3, or NAIA
Yep.
due to academic inabilities or
Hmm.
learning differences will never compete at that level.
Right, right.
So there's just that's avoiding, that's avoiding. And I think
Okay.
if people learn to, parents, coaches, and athletes learn that they have to accept their results based on what they've avoided.
Okay.
And then you have somebody who's a kid really wants to be a three-sport athlete or a four-sport athlete in high school. And they come to you and they say, Coach, I want to wrestle, but I'm going to play football and I'm going to do something else. That's like Kerry Maltese, Fairfax High School, right? He's the Virginia State champion wrestling. He also had, I don't have the number, right, like 19 touchdowns this past season. And he's being recruited for both.
Right,
I
right.
always, when I'm working with him, talk about his muscle usage, where it compares to football and where it compares to wrestling. And I'll say
Mhm.
to him, Harry, if you're running the ball, you do this 7 movements like you do to finish this takedown, but here you would deviate to this movement. Like the coach, the parent, and the kid has to accept, if the going to be a multi-sport athlete, that opportunities in both sports are going to be diminished because both of
Right,
those
right.
sports are year-round training, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah,
don't
that
want to
makes
do
sense.
that. And the two coaches that are opposing sports should be collaborative. I don't mean you have
Yeah.
to go
Otherwise,
out and have a
everyone's selfish, and every time the kid shows up to that practice, they're being asked what they're doing when they're not, and yeah, and it becomes an ego thing for each coach.
right.
And
And so
that's
that's
yeah,
where a coach is avoiding
yeah.
understanding why they're really coaching.
Right, right.
Now, if a coach has a real truth or proven reason to say to the athlete or the parent, I think in this sport, you're going to excel more for these reasons.
Hmm.
And they sit down with the parent and athlete and explain it. And then maybe invite the other coach in and explain it, get the other coach's viewpoint. Then there's nothing wrong with that. But you
Right,
you can't, you shouldn't, as a coach, if you feel something or you see something and you only convey it to the kid and pressure the kid by calling him out in public in practice, and you don't engage the parent or even consider engaging the other coach, especially if you're at the same high school or college,
mhm.
that's that coach is avoiding something.
Right, right.
And I think there's a lot of that in some parents and coaches and kids don't want to accept their own responsibility in this, in these processes. And that makes for, an ineffective situation. But this time of the year is the right time to be figuring that out. There's still plenty of time to plan the training program for the summer you want. Your athlete doesn't
Hmm.
need to go to every dual tournament in the summer, like, Disney duels or Bison duels or whatever's going on, NHSCA duels, which I'll be at NHSCA duels and probably at Bison. But what I'm saying is, if you're training to get better at technique and your athlete's not in shape and not doing freestyle and not doing Greco, they probably shouldn't at the last minute decide to go to Fargo.
Right, right.
What motivated you to do that at the last minute? And then for me, I guess what's so interesting is, so at NHSCA, let's say, there used to be Flow Nationals, you probably remember.
Yep, yep.
And some of these, USA Folk Style Nationals, some of these
Right,
post high school season tournaments, you see these people acting completely despondent that they or their athlete didn't win NHSCH and HSCA by
yeah, yeah.
grade. It's not even a national tournament. It's
Right,
just
yeah,
by
yeah.
grade.
Right,
And they act like they are just completely shocked. And when you inquire, like, oh, how many times a week are you training? What's your conditioning? What's your nutrition like? And they're like, oh, yeah. I said, what did you have after you weighed in? Went and got a pizza at this pizza place in Virginia Beach we love. And then the next morning I had waffles. Well, how could you be surprised if they had a
Right.
plan that included a nutrition component, if they had a plan that included SAT studying, if they had a plan that included cross training in another, like you doing Bikram yoga or Pilates or some other sport that's going to be helpful for them, you
Hmm.
know, it, you would have a valid reason to go, dang, I had this, it's like a, 4D chess, right? You're playing this chess game, but you have to go back and figure out what didn't work if you lose.
Right, right.
And that's not going on. And families are throwing thousands of dollars to go on these trips to tournaments in Vegas, tournaments in Gatlinburg, tournaments in Orlando, Florida,
Hmm.
tournaments in Virginia Beach, and they bring the whole family, or Reno. I was just in Reno Worlds, which our guys did really great, by the way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but they're bringing all these people, and it becomes this gigantic expense for their athlete to go 0-2.
Right,
And
right,
parents need what they avoid when they go to tournaments is, what is the plan if the athlete does go 1-2 or 0-2? What is that? Is it within 24 hours? You sit down and you look at what you avoided and see what you want to change?
right.
Is it shifting the blame to the coach or the kid? Is the coach shifting it to the parent and the kid? What's the collaboration? What's the plan? How many times have you said to your kid, you haven't won your last match, you haven't lost your last match? If it's 30 seconds longer, you may win. If it's 30 seconds less, you may lose, right? You don't
Right.
know, but what are we practicing in this match? What routines did we set down? What worked in this tournament? Staying at this hotel, going to bed at this time, avoiding sugar, not going out to eat. And then the parents need to get back and talk about what was their finances on this trip. Did they exceed what they expected to spend? Were they under what they expected to spend? What was the quality of nutrition? Could have getting an Airbnb and having Instacart deliver 4 pounds of chicken and protein powder and some, whatever kind of what they mix it with, having it there waiting for them. Would that have made a difference?
Yeah,
Because a
yeah.
lot of people go, well, I'm just going to run to the store when I get there. Whatever, they may actually do it and work. There's no one better than Nolan Saunders at managing
Right.
effectively low cost, effective nutrition, weight cutting, and tournament logistics than Nolan Saunders. And that's a fact. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody knows me and Nolan know we have our own dynamic together, but I've coached Joshua since 2010, 3 world teams, traveled to 2 with him, been with Jacob since the first day he started wrestling. I know. And you can do it. And then what kind of mindset does that put your athlete in? If you're going to a tournament or you're going to a practice and you're promising an ice cream on the way home, how sustainable is that?
Right, right.
And that's what I'm saying, is that there needs to be, uh, what are you avoiding? And by avoiding, what are you accepting, right? And then
Okay.
are you going to accept when something happens, or are you going to plan? Are you avoiding planning to try to get back to where you want?
Yeah, so you've got this end goal in mind, and it sounds like we need to be really careful and clear as to what that end goal should actually be. It's very easy to just settle on an end goal that is not in the interest of the athlete and comes from it's easy to set on the highest end goal and just make that the goal all the time rather than either being realistic or talking with the athlete. But then what with that goal in mind, it seems like almost the lazy approach is winning matches then becomes the path to that goal, which is just another outcome. You're taking an outcome and then placing it onto an ultimate outcome rather than sitting down and saying, well, what type of person what is the type of person that actually attains that goal, and what are the things that that type of person does in order to reach that goal? And then focus on the little things. Every decision that you make is a compromise, right? But you can be you can be happy with those compromises if you know that you're along the path of development to I'm doing these things so I can become the type of person that actually achieves the goal that I have in mind, rather than just running around the country trying to win matches and then being angry or devastated when that doesn't magically occur because of the ability you or your athlete might have naturally, and then the fact that you've traveled to some location to wrestle every weekend.
I'm really fortunate that, I am around Nolan quite a bit, but the other coach that I'm around who is exceptional at instilling character and instilling, he's thought it all out. This is the goal for my children. This are the things that are going to build them to be the person who can obtain that. And that is Maurice Worthy. Maurice was a NCAA finalist. I think he lost to Josh Koscheck, and he was a finalist from West Point. There's only been
Okay.
3 athletes at
Right,
West
right.
Point to ever be a finalist. So that tells you something about him. But his boys and the athletes that he works with that are really tied into him, they have this, like even if I'm talking to one of them and I say, teasingly, did you sweat it all today? Because the matches went so fast. He goes, Coach, tomorrow I'm going to have tough matches. Any next match could be my toughest match.
Yeah.
And this is, and that's what they're thinking. And I've seen them
Right.
win, and I've definitely seen them take hard losses. And the same thing is true for Jacob Saunders. So we're Jacob and Nolan and I are all in the same place, for just take Reno Worlds because that's the most recent one. And Jacob is like, okay, tomorrow, coach, we could go in the building at 10. So we're going to go to the other facility, the private facility that his dad pre-planned, pre-found, got organized with, and found a workout partner, his son's size in the area who's not in the tournament. And we go over there at 8 a.m. and have a full workout.
Yeah.
We do the workout that makes Jacob feel confident. And then when we get to Reno, he's the first kid on the mat. He already knows who his partner is going to be. This is not orchestrated. This part is not orchestrated by his dad. It's Jacob. He's like,
Okay.
get in the car, Dad. We're going. And he has this in mind. And just to give you an idea, after he wins Reno World and gets the Trinity Award, we finally leave the venue at like 5:15. At 6 o'clock, we're back over at Nevada Elite practicing with a Fargo finalist or maybe a Fargo champ and another like 120 pounder. 2 hours till 8:30 freestyle in Greco because Jacob didn't want to miss this opportunity to have me in the same room.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's him. And that's developed character.
Hey, that sounds like we talk to our kids about this all the time. You have to love the process. I mean, the way to win a lot of wrestling matches is to love the process and work hard every day to become a better wrestler. People sort of pine over their wins and losses, but if you love competing and you love preparing to compete, then the results take care of themselves. I'm sure you've seen this probably in the fight world too, that
For sure.
everyone pours their heart and soul into the preparation for each fight, and after a loss, it's hard, but you have to be able to know that I did everything I could in that, and especially in that world where one or two small things can can change the course of and wrestling that's true as well, but probably more so in fighting where but you have to absolutely love the process, and your goal is to get better at in our case wrestling or fighting, whatever it is that you're pursuing. If your goal is just to get a little bit better at that thing every day, and it sounds like Jacob's got that as a and logistically he's now mature enough to be able to plan out that process. The
Yes.
wins and losses take care of themselves. You don't have to worry about whether you're going to win or lose the next match. Just go in knowing that you've done everything you can to prepare and compete, and then you'll win a
Well,
lot if you.
the other part about two parts about this is one, all this group of coaches and athletes, parent coaches, which is what Nolan and Reese Worthy are. They've instilled that in them, and I see it in the kids' attentiveness to their academics. It
Mhm. Right,
crosses over. It's not just one thing. The other part is when you're doing what you're describing, I'm going to do something every day to be better at wrestling. I'm going to do those things need to be defined, not
right.
what they see on Instagram or not what they hear in a a sound bite from ESPN or Flow or Rockfin or wherever. I'm,
Yeah,
I'm not putting any of that down, but there needs to be a plan. And then you need
right.
to have a coach like Javier Mendez will say to you, you're, I hope you don't, but I think you're going to fail with this plan.
And it's not just working hard. It's yeah, it's implementing a plan. We in our sport especially, there's a lot of people that's just banging the drum to just get in and work harder. Where working harder is not. Sometimes it is. If there are kids that are lazy and don't put in the work and aren't well conditioned, but oftentimes it's working hard, but at a well thought out a well thought out plan that's going to get you to where you need to be rather than just putting your head down and doing more.
Yes. We have we've had that conversation many times
Right,
and
right.
there's a, you know, I mean, we've known each other a long time. So, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist and I can get stuck
Hmm.
if I don't think I'm gonna, write it down correctly or do something perfectly or explain it optimally. But the person that's coordinating has to have uh, detail of what they want to see accomplished. And then they have to have a self check factor on how they're reacting. So if 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 your kid's high school team wins a national championship, but the last email that came out from the coach didn't call out every single kid's performance, and you're upset that your kid's not mentioned in an email, but they won the national championship,
Right,
they're a national All-American in whatever, promotion, NHSCA, prep nationals, whatever. What's the skew there?
right, right.
Your self-image.
Yeah, right,
And that's what's hard. And a lot of times when the parent and the coach takes that off themselves, then they truly inspire. One, they give themselves relief, and two, they truly inspire the athlete to feel accepted and want to work harder. There's avoidance of pain and confrontation and conflict is ingrained deeply in kids. The cyberbullying, the way
hmm
people talk about what you wear, what you date, what your sexuality is, what do your parents do? How much money do you make? Where do you live? All of that, some of it you just can't avoid. You and I know as parents, and everybody
hmm
listening are parents, but you can start early teaching your kid how to confront. And the number one person they're going to confront is you.
yeah.
So so you have to decide what the rules of engagement are going to be in a confrontation. How
Right,
are you going to handle it? When are you going to do it? What are you going to allow to be said? And you have to play through that. And otherwise, it just turns into a mess. Either the parent is dominant in the confrontation or the
right,
kid becomes nippy and sullen and they go, it's hormones, which I'm sure it is too, but it's also, they don't know what the resolution process is. And through lots of interacting and asking and getting advice, a lot of people, if they can just set a time every 4 days for both sides to be able to express in a 15-minute window what they're feeling or have concerns about, and then not discuss it again, set a time then when you're going to discuss it again and let it
Right.
go in between, you can get a lot further. But because otherwise it just becomes this harping,
Yeah.
looping circle and your emotions are on top of it. And it goes downhill. I think it goes downhill.
I
So
know as a teacher and a coach for myself, I've become so much better at that with age and experience that there are a lot of awesome young teachers and coaches, but I think it's easier with lots and lots of reps with lots of kids to realize that it's not about me and maybe I can if I can step back and remove myself and watch this from above, like what's the best outcome of this conversation for this kid? Like leave myself out of it. I'm an adult. I can take care of myself. But what is the best outcome of this interaction for that kid? And then you don't always get there, but let's frame the conversation to work towards that rather than make myself feel better by making a point that I might have or it's just let's figure out how to best where does this kid need to go and what can we do about that right now and then work towards that in our conversation rather than yeah making it about me and my making a point and because then I leave feeling better but that doesn't do anything for the kid.
well, Javier Mendez taught me that. He he's he's given me a lot of advice when I needed it. He's not super loquacious. So when he says something, I
Right.
stop and listen. But he has said to me, Coach, it's not the end result that it's not the end result that's your legacy with any individual athlete. It's the time you were influencing them, the quality of what you put in. And I
Mhm.
remember one time in this kind of strenuous situation, he said to me, Coach, all of us here have watched you for whatever amount of years it was, 6, I think at the time, maybe 8, put in unbelievable quality into this athlete. And whatever the end result is, your time was quality time, and every coach is part of a stack.
Mhm.
And your time is quality time. You can rest assured that you have done an immensely wonderful job.
Yeah,
And then once you can accept that, then I think that's key. Once
and
you can
thinking
accept
back
that,
to my own career that as an athlete that's I hardly call it a career I guess but thinking back to my own experience as an athlete that's exactly the case like I don't remember what any of my coaches might have said to me after I won a match or lost a match and that's why as a coach I try not to get in a kid's ear right after they walk off the mat because that's not what they're paying attention to but it's the stuff in the practice room that you remember and the interactions and the van ride to and from the turn. Those are the conversations that you remember, not those that occur after those big sort of milestone moments where you win a big match or you lose a big match. It's the influence they had in the practice room and all the other time that you spent. Like you said, it's the quality, quantity and quality, right? You have a lot of quality interactions over a long period of time. That's where you have your mark as a coach. It's not the pre-game speech or the post-match
yes.
consolation and all of that stuff.
And if people, the coaches feel like eyes are on them and they want to, leap in and say
Right.
something. It's hard to do, but a key component of dealing with avoidance and acceptance is when you have an opportunity to give your athlete a choice. So my counsel to the athletes that I'm cornering was I tell them before, days before that day, right before they go on the mat, when you're through with this mat, take your phone and your gear, turn on your phone for 5 to 6 minutes and go walk by yourself. I inform the parents or any significant others that are there. That's our plan. And then I said, come back to me when you're done. Don't sit down, don't start eating, just come back. So they'll come back and I'll say, this is what you did well, really well.
Hmm.
Are you ready to hear some alternative options for that match? Or would you rather wait?
Right.
What does it matter if I tell them right then, or if I tell them in 20 minutes, or I tell them in 2 days? Of course, if they're going to wrestle again,
Right. Right.
I would like to get to tell them. But if they say they don't want to hear it and we're wrestling day two and that's the last match on day one, then
Yeah.
I'm just going to review it in the
Let's
morning.
come back when we practice next. Yeah.
Yeah,
As a
when we
coach,
before
it's
when we're
if it's
warming up for
about
the next
you, it's
day.
it's it's about you trying to get it off your chest right away and making me feel better by getting this out because I'm frustrated that you didn't perform.
Yes.
Which if you make it about you, yeah, then you can make things worse by
Well, and the other thing is too, sometimes the coach, I am this way, or it used to be this way, more so, less so now, is that I'm concerned about how the parent's going to react.
right, yeah,
So I used to want to give the athlete the answer so they would have a comeback to try to push off the vitriol of the parent, whether the
hmm
parent's meaning it or not, a person who's dependent on another person for love, shelter, food, water, life feels it. I can't even imagine how many more times they feel that
right, yeah,
coming. So I've wanted to spit it out, so to speak, but that doesn't
right,
work either. But I've got 6 minutes,
yeah,
6 minutes, 5 minutes. The parent's ready to talk, whatever. If they want to blame, I'll say, hey, we need to have this conversation another day because I'm still focused on this and you're going to pull me to an emotional place that's not going to benefit your
hmm
athlete later today.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but that's really hard work. It's
right,
it's it's incredibly hard work. It requires, you know, not avoiding your performance as a coach, not avoiding your performance as a parent. It is, you know, accepting that you have faults and going back and not avoiding making a plan to change.
right. So you're being intentional about these interactions by confronting, yeah, accepting the outcome of what occurred as a result of as being the result of the preparation that you put in or didn't put in as you but rather than just flying on emotions, which I think a lot of us do sometimes,
All
it's
of us.
it's taking a step back and yeah, like we said before, just kind of what's the best outcome for this interaction and how can I, maybe we do need to confront some things that we either did or didn't do or could have done differently, or maybe we need to there's a lot of different avenues you could take, but if you're intentional about the way that you frame these things, that you can do it for the benefit of the athlete rather than just to make yourself feel better.
And I think the last part of this conversation is accepting when you've done everything's been done that you can
Mhm.
do and recognizing that this might not turn out the way
Right.
the way we all wanted. I said, if you're going to be an exceptional coach, you have to accept that this could be every day could be the last day you work with this athlete. Like for whatever reason, the
Hmm.
parents get a new job, they're going a different direction, etc. And you have to want to give them the best that you have. And if you find you don't want to give the best you have because you don't know if they're going to be with you and you want a specific outcome, should you be coaching?
Right. Right.
Or is that specific outcome that you want and you feel about trying to fill something in you that
Yeah.
maybe a little work with a therapist or an online like live in or the holistic psychologist or any of that, all those kinds of things you can do online that will genuinely help. And I think as a parent, you have to say, am I okay if we spend all this time and money and my kid doesn't become a national champ or whatever a goal is in your mind? Will I still love the same? Will I still be the same? Will I control things that could hurt them that I say? I mean, unfortunately for a parent, it's not like a coach. It's you can leave a coach or a coach can leave you.
Right. Right.
But a parent's a different deal. So there's a lot of onus, I believe, on parents if they're going to want their kid to have this goal for them to be understanding and introspective of themselves. And I think that's a really hard thing. And then I think if you have an athlete who says, yes, I want this to be the goal. Yes, I understand these are the characteristics. Yes, I'm going to put in the work, and then self-sabotaging appears. That is, I believe, the coach's responsibility to point out to the parent,
Hmm.
maybe to the athlete if they're of a certain age, and it's up to the parent to seek out help for the kid. Sitting your kid down and saying, tell us how you feel, tell us how you feel, tell us how you feel, tell us how you feel. They're going to try to come up with what they think you want them to say that they feel.
Right,
Because
right.
if they already knew what they were feeling, or they felt they could say it, because there's confrontational ease in the household, in the parental relationship, they would have already done it. One,
Yeah,
they might
yeah,
not be able to know what it is. Two, they might not feel safe, and they need to speak to someone, I believe.
yeah.
And the trainer or the sports psychologist at the middle school is not the person.
Yeah, I know sometimes even when I have some of these conversations with my own kids, I know when they're frustrated, especially after a poor performance by either them or their team, the first 20 or 30 minutes of that conversation, we're just gonna be talking and letting frustrations come out. We're not actually gonna get to the real conversation for a little bit, and I'm not I
That's
can't
true.
allow myself to become frustrated with the lack of progress we're making in that conversation. It's just we're talking and letting things out, and then we'll get to the point where they're ready to then confront what it is that's behind their frustration, and but that's not going to happen in 20 or 30.
No.
Sometimes it takes a long time to get to that point, and you can't rush that. It's just people we're all different, and I can't be selfish and it sounds like you're saying that too. As a coach and as a parent, it's easy to become selfish and think about it. And that part when you were talking about wrestling coaches or any coach, and they're thinking about the success of an athlete and whether if this is my last practice with this athlete, do I put my all into this, or do I just they're going anyway. So whatever accomplishments they might have aren't necessarily going to reflect on me. If that is what's motivating my interactions with this athlete, then what am I doing but just trying to fill my own bucket here, which isn't why we should be in this profession as a coach. We're here to pour into the athletes and whatever happens, we're a resource for them and their success. They aren't there to perform for us to make us to build us up. We're the adults in this situation. We should be able to to be okay with whatever outcome uh, occurs, but knowing that we did our best to facilitate the success of that kid, whether or not they choose to recognize us for that or not, or whether or not yeah, it's all.
Well, it's so hard. I mean, so many people put so much effort, time, money.
Mhm.
So many times I've heard parents say, I put all this money into this and I got nothing out
I
of
hear
it.
that my kids are both in club sports. It's they're young. One of them's younger, and it's interesting to hear conversations from parents about scholarships and things like that. Is I didn't put all this money into playing this sport to just end up having them stop after high school or and it's like what are we doing this for if it's not I want you to develop in the moment as an athlete, and whatever happens in the end is what's going to happen, but I can't be emotionally tied up into what's going to happen years down the line because of some supposed financial investment in.
Right, it's crazy. Well, I think that also is just a trigger. I mean, is a trigger for an adult to go, I need to map out what my plan is for me as the collaborating parent in my son's sports career or my daughter's sports career. When sometimes I have a thought, and I use I see a therapist, multiple, actually two therapists for two different things. And but I also use the Liven app, and I've used the Liven app to learn cognitive behavioral behavior therapy.
Hmm.
And so now when I have a thought and I'm like, why am I having that thought? That's a crazy thought. I don't think I really mean that. Where's that coming from? And that Liven app has taught me how to isolate and reframe and replace that, and then not to have any lingering, self-deprecating
Hmm.
reaction to it. And then I find that the frequency that thought comes back is greatly diminished, 60, 70%. And it's such a little effort to, whatever, I don't know what the there's tons of live and apps, or, like live and apps, but it's like 4.99 or something. And it's, I'd probably do 15 minutes every 3 days, 4 days. It's just,
Yeah. Well,
but
it,
it's
it
worth it.
sounds like it just goes back to being intentional in those situations, right?
Yes, there you go. Intentional. I
You
feel like
you
I'm talking with Melissa
you have a
Ritchie,
plan,
who would,
and
who
then
would,
you
who would say, she can take all my stuff and make it very concise.
yeah, yeah.
Gratefully.
All right. Well, this is good. Any other aspects of uh this conversation that we didn't hit on that you
Yeah,
think
I
you
think
wanted
it's
to?
okay to ask. We have on on our website, on the Wrestling Prep website, an opportunity to do comprehensive training or planning. And when I explain to people, when people inquire and I explain, this is not what they think they want. They want, how many sit-ups, how many pull-ups, how many times should they take this course or do
Mhm.
this practice is going to make me, they always use, people like Jason Welch, Aaron Gandara, Christian Pagdaleo, Christy Creason, how Drew Morgan. I mean, the whole Jesse Vasquez,
Give me their
Jacob Drexler.
program.
Yeah,
What
I want my
exactly did you
kid.
do with them? And I want to do exactly that. And that's not, yeah.
Yes. And then when I suggest, oh, why don't you listen to this YouTube video of Nolan Saunders talking about it? They don't want, that's not what they want. They literally want people to just tell them what to do, and they don't
Mhm.
want to do anything else about it. They don't want to do it. It's like somebody who says, just tell me exactly what I have to eat. That's the only thing I'll eat, and I'll just do exactly what you say. And we all know that doesn't work. So, I think you have to make a comprehensive plan. There's a lot of people who know how to do it, and or can do it, and it's not one person isn't the solution. I Carolyn Wester, I'm not one person solution. I'll
Mhm.
say, I think you need to ask this person and this person and get this advice. Or, people will say to me, why don't you ask, families will say, I want to move my kid next to you for their high school years. I'm like, don't come to Northern Virginia to wrestle nationally if your intent is this goal you've attained. There's just
Right,
not
right.
the competition. The public schools don't support and go to all the major tournaments. They don't have it. Be with me for the time you want, but then there's lots of places around the country, private and public schools, where you could get what you need, and they have the tournaments already in their whatever, in their schedule, and they're experienced, and then that's what you do. I can always consult and help,
Right,
but
right.
but I'm not going to be the end all. No one, anybody who tells you they're the end all, they're not telling the truth. It's just fortuitous that we have so many people now coming through who started young and went all the way through their high school and college career, and will say, I still use the sequential muscle order and body leveraging I learned as a kid. I'm getting ready to ship over to Sophia some videos that we're going to send out to people who are coming to camp, of some of the athletes, former athletes, telling how to prepare for camp, what you would want to
Mhm.
do. And this kid who's at Lake Highland Prep, Robert Kacharzik, yeah, I got his last night, and I just played it before I went to sleep. And he says, I've been coached by Carolyn for 10 years. I'm like, 10 years? And he's like, I live in Orlando, Florida. I go to Lake Highland Prep. I'm wrestling at Harvard. And then he's just talking about how everything he learned from day one is still part of it. And every year, Robert comes back and trains for multiple times. And I think I'm going to be down at Lake Highland Prep potentially here pretty soon at the request of the head coach. But, it's just that's what you want.
Hmm.
That's what you want. No one person is the end all, but when you find somebody who could contribute something to your athlete's career and they can carry it through and use it in whatever way they want, whether they train with me all those years or for a subset of years. And there's other coaches have same things of value and
Right.
therapists and people that can help you do it. Not one person is
Hmm.
your end all source ever.
Yeah, we've talked about that before too, on the podcast, as far as, yeah, being a part of a team of coaches that um, someone has orchestrated to come around an athlete, and being okay as a coach, of being part of a group instead of them just being your prodigy.
Yeah.
and uh and yeah, this is but no, this was great. I thought a lot about myself as a coach, and also about my interactions with my own my own children as well. So this is great.
Good. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
so thanks for hanging out with us, and check out the website. We heard a lot about Carolyn's schedule early on in the podcast, as far as lots of things going on this summer all over the country, or come join us in Virginia. I'm
Well, yeah,
excited for the
I
coaches
think the
clinic as
with
well.
the 20% off is May 10th. Is that right?
Yeah, so we
The last
have
day
about
May
3 weeks
10th.
or so until the final discount goes away for camps this summer. All right. Well, I'll guess you're starting off your Whirlwind Summer Tour pretty
In
soon. So,
Vegas.
all
Yep.
right.
On
Yeah.
Monday,
So
we're
have a
Monday,
great time in
we're
Vegas next week, and we'll
I will.
hear from you soon. All right. Bye.